So I think recording has started. All right. Um, okay, why don't we start? So hello, everyone. So last few months, I have been obsessed with this whole topic of, um, generative AI. And the reason I put ChatGPT in the name is because ChatGPT is very big part of it. But ChatGPT is not um, ChatGPT is not generative AI in the sense that there is a lot more besides ChatGPT in generative AI. And in today's presentation, what you're going to learn is also what else is out there which can do something that's known as generative AI. So why don't we jump in? I think you all know me, so I'm going to just skip um, my introduction. But most notable part of it is that I've been working for 22 years in software, and I've been last about 15 years I've been working in an AI company, and we have done a considerably lot of AI in our company, and mainly natural language processing. Most of our business actually depend on natural language processing and advertising, of course. So as a result of that, I have a little bit of background, maybe better than some of you, but I'm not an expert. But I've definitely managed multiple AI teams throughout this time, and have faced all the problems associated with as well. So as I told you, first thing I want to discuss is how traditional AI or traditional machine learning that you have been hearing about is different from this brand of AI or this type of AI or machine learning that you have been hearing in last few months. So the name for this kind of AI is generative AI. And the name, a technical term sort of for the AI that traditional AI that we have been doing is known as discriminative models. So there are discriminative models and there are generative models. So let's try to understand what the difference between those two. So discriminative models, what they do is they simply discriminate between the data. And what that means is a classification is a usual example. So there is a web page. It tries to tell you if this web page is a finance page, a sports page, or a fashion page, right? So all it's doing is it's taking that data and it's telling you, it's discriminating between it. It's telling you what label sort of applies to it. And label is a taxonomy, right? Meaning you have given it like 100 different categories, and you are basically telling it just fit this page into one of these categories, right? So that's the kind of discrimination it does. Whereas in generative models, it actually generates something new, completely new. So you are not asking it to apply label to something. You're not asking it to um, you're not asking it to necessarily just assign some sort of label to this. But instead of that, what you're telling is you're saying, how do we how do we predict what's the next sentence would be, right? And a good example of this would be um, how your Gmail, like you probably know that there's a smart compose feature in Gmail, and what it tries to do is once you start typing a sentence, it actually like predicts what the next two words will be or next three, 4 words will be, and it tries to complete the sentence, right? And that's the generative part of it. That so it actually tries to generate sort of either text or video or sound or those kind of things. And that's the generative models do. And as I already discussed, right, discriminative models do how likely the label is to apply to the instance, versus generative models say that how likely the given example is. And what that means is if you have 45,000, so if you have 1 million words in an English language, it just tries to figure out what would be the next word, right? And that's generative AI. Now, a lot of generative AI models are either unsupervised or semi-supervised AI, and a lot of discriminative models are supervised AI. And what supervised AI means that the way these models are trained a different way. What we do is we take a lot of sort of examples. Okay, let's say you want to teach a model how to distinguish between bus, car, train, boat, and an airplane, right? So what you would do is you would, in a supervised AI, you will take a lot of examples of bus and feed it to the model and tell it that it's bus. It's a bus. If you take a lot of examples of train, you will give it to the model and it'll tell you it's a train, right? And you keep doing that, and then the model keeps learning, right? It understands what's a bus, what's. Whereas in generative model, you actually don't do that. You don't. There's no labeling, right? On unsupervised models, there's no labeling, right? It kind of figures out itself, and that's that's the beauty of it. And there is a lot of stuff about it. There is zero shot learning versus there is one shot or two shot learning. So it's actually can get really complex, and I don't claim to understand that whole thing fully, right? But essentially in zero shot learning, you say that you actually don't, if you want to teach somebody what an airplane is or a model an airplane is, then what you do is you give an example of bus, train, cars, and other things, and then it'll infer based on that information that this doesn't fit in all these categories, so it must be an airplane, right? So it's complex, but you don't actually feed the same data that you want classified, not classified, but you want to predict. Now, generative models are computationally much more expensive, so they look a lot of computing power, whereas discriminative models are much easier. They're computationally much more cheap. And what really happened is there is an interesting history about this. Like, is in 2017 there was a paper that was written by a few people, and the name of the paper was um, "Attention is all you need." So if you Google just "attention is all you need," you will find that paper. And this was published by a bunch of Google engineers. And that paper sort of outlined a completely new way of thinking. So earlier models were not able to understand deep context. That means they were able to only take maybe 3-4 word of the previous words and then generate next word. But if you are just depending on last 3-4 words to generate the next word, it's not that reliable, because the context could be 2-3 sentences before that, right? So what this paper did, it labeled it laid out a basis for a technology known as transformers, and that enabled people models to understand deep context. Like now it can read many sentences, and now it can understand what is this, what is it talking about, what is this context about, and then it is much better to generate. It can generate next line, 2 line, 3 lines, right? So that technology sort of gave birth to LLMs, or large language models, which are behind uh, ChatGPT like uh, ChatGPT like models. By the way, if you want, you can just interrupt me and ask questions. Okay. Um, so that's how sort of large language models were born. Uh, so what can you do with this generative AI? Right? You can pretty much generate anything, right? And you can generate text, you can generate images, you can generate 3D avatars, you can generate sound, and hence music, and you can generate videos, because if you can generate images, you can generate videos as well. Videos is nothing but a large series of images, right? So you can generate all of these things, and that is actually it's amazing that it can do a way more things that you would not be possible, like a couple of years ago, a few years ago. And so let's talk about straight away, like, which are the different technologies exist in this generative AI space, right? So I've divided these technologies roughly into 3 different categories, these 3 different columns that you see. The Lexica, Midjourney, and DAL-E2 are the models that generate uh, images, right? So you can essentially give them a description of a scenario, and it'll try to generate an image out of that. And by the way, this midjourney.ai has been there for more than a year. So some of these models are not new. They're not like after ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the most popular sort of thing that you know, but there are a lot of generative models that exist before ChatGPT. And so midjourney.ai is very popular. And I actually met a random person on LAX airport a few days ago. And that guy was telling me that he uses midjourney.ai to generate interesting sort of designs that he intends to use in selling wrapping paper on Etsy, which is, I think, fascinating for me that I hadn't even thought that you could use that way. So you can generate images, right? Essentially. And DALI is also available. If you want to try DALI, it's also available through DALI is OpenAI's model, by the way. OpenAI's model for, and OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT, right? DALI is OpenAI's model for generating images. And if you want to actually use DALI, you can simply go to bing.com/create and use your Microsoft ID or Live ID and log in, and you can simply start generating images, and it's free. Uh, so I think that's very Lexica.art is another technology which allows you to generate images. So these are image generation generative AI models. The middle one are the video generating models. And later on, I'll give you an example of this, but Synthesia is very popular. And you can simply create videos, a lot of videos without having to actually shoot or film anything. So there's Deep Brain AI Studios, there's Pictory, Colossine, Synthesia. And again, a lot of these are existing for a while now, like they're there for a year, some of them are for months, right? And the third one is a sound generation. And Well Said Labs, 11 Labs, and Descript. And in fact, sound generation is something that I have used it myself. And I will actually show you live examples of what sound generation is and how it is. And what they allow you to do is you can essentially train these models or these technologies on any kind of voice, and then it will read anything you want in that voice. So what you can do is you can actually train these models using your own voice. So if I give a half an hour sample of my voice to Descript, then Descript will then have enough words so that it can actually predict how will I say a word that I never said it to it, right? So then it can read anything about my voice. So that is a fascinating thing about it, that you can simply train these models with your own voice and it will generate. Then you can start typing, you can give the text, and that text will be read in your voice. So that's amazing thing. I actually use Well Said Labs very regularly. I don't use my own voice, but I use, there are like 120 voices that they've given. I just choose one of those voices, and I'll show you a live example of that as well. Right. So these are image generation, video generation, and voice generation, sort of. Now, another category of generative AI is code generation, right? So there are a lot of tools that allow you to simply generate code. For example, GitHub Copilot. You probably have either heard about it or are using it in production or even in your day-to-day usage. And what GitHub Copilot does is that you can simply write a function, let's say, and put a comment on top of it and describe what that function does, and it will generate the code for you. Isn't that amazing? That and Amazon's Code Whisperer does the same thing, except GitHub Copilot is much better. It's a better technology, and it's very popular right now. So code generation is another example of generative AI. So generative AI not only generates text, video, and audio, but it can also generate code. Um, and then the most popular examples, right, is the large language models for text. And these models, the most popular example is ChatGPT, where it's conversational bot. So you can actually ask questions, or you can converse with it as if you are talking to that model, and then it'll reply you as if you are as if that is a human being and it's talking to another human being. So it's fascinating. And Bard is another. Bard is essentially same same as ChatGPT, but Bard comes from Google and ChatGPT comes from OpenAI. And I think ChatGPT is a little bit better or much better than Bard. Um, so the underlying technology of this is again called large language models. The reason it's called large language models is because a lot of data is fed to these models. And how much data? Almost like entire internet, right, is fed to them. And GPT is only like one kind of model, one company's model, but there are a lot of other models exist out there, and lot of them are open source models. So these are not proprietary models either, right? So, for example, the Palm model is Google from Google, and GPT is from OpenAI. Um, um, these models are proprietary models, but there are also open source versions of it. Bloom is ChatGPT is actually proprietary, but not GPT itself is not proprietary. Um, Bloom is open source. Alpaca is open source. So there is a lot of models that are open source. So you can actually take these models and also train them and tune them your own way if you wanted to, right? So there are literally a long list of open source models available right now. And GPT, by the way, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So now you understand why I told you that story about attention is attention is all you need paper from Google scientists, is because that technology, transformer technology, is what made ChatGPT possible today. All right. So now, again, what are real life use cases for these things, right? Let's go a little bit in detail and try to understand how can we use them in our day-to-day work, as in our personal capacity as well as in our professional capacity, right? So some of the examples are like, considering ChatGPT, right? You can take a legal document and ask it to summarize it, and we come across this almost every day, right? I mean, we have to sign something somewhere, right? And we don't understand, like, for example, in my world, in real estate world, right, we have to give these 70-page documents to people, and nobody has time to read 70-page document, right? And most of that is like a boilerplate template stuff, right? So you can give that document to ChatGPT and say, can you summarize it to me? And it actually does a fairly decent job, right? It'll tell you what um, what the crux of it is. Yeah, Swapna, do you wanted to ask something?
Yes. So, as you said, if it's a general boilerplate contract, that's fine. But if you are, let's say you have a term sheet, that you have a proposal and you have a term sheet, then that's your proprietary information. Do you have any tips on how to make sure that ChatGPT does not include your proprietary data as part of its entire learning set?
There is a checkbox that you can check. That if you check that checkbox, it will not use your data for training data.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send it to you exact location of that, but there is
All
a
right.
checkbox there for ChatGPT. Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, if you don't do that, then it's going to take that as an example. Well, first of all, please understand that there is no concept as continuous learning. A lot of people have this myth in their mind about AI, that as you are asking questions to AI is continuously learning. No,
Right, but we
that's
have
not what
had
happens.
situations where
Yeah,
our clients will say that we don't want you to. Uh,
that's different. But the way it happens, I want you to understand how it actually happens. Is
right,
that it's going to just what's happening is the companies that make these technologies, they are just monitoring interaction with you and that model, and they
right,
are just logging all that data,
right,
and they are using that data to then later on train the model.
right.
But when you ask questions to the model, it means nothing to the model. It doesn't include, it doesn't make improvement in model. Please
Oh,
understand that the model has been trained on certain sort of data, and after that the model is frozen, and then what we call is inferencing is happening. Inferencing meaning you ask a question, it gives you an answer. You ask a question, and that during that process, model is not improving.
okay,
Okay, what's the way it to improve is that it can the companies can log all that data and then manually verify which one was correct, which was not correct, and whatever is correct they can fed it in for further training of the model. Okay,
Right, but if you still have confidential data, then you
that is correct. Then you should not. Yeah, you should be very careful about it. Absolutely. In fact, in our company, we're trying to lay down guidelines about what you should not pass and what you pass, like the credentials and stuff like that. Uh, Another is so I want to show you an examples, right? Some of the examples, like content generation. Like so, so for example, if you actually go to my website, right? I don't know whether you can hear this or not, but just hear this for like few seconds, okay? How realistic this voice is. Were you able to hear it?
No.
Oh, you're not able to. Let me see if I can share the sound. Uh, let's see, settings.
Maybe try playing it on your phone.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Then it'll just. That's a good, very good idea. Blog. I'm just going to that article because I haven't enabled it for all articles. This requires some work from me. Okay, I think I found it. Okay.
In the long run, real estate tends to increase in value. For instance, a house that was purchased for $100,000 approximately 10 years ago would now have a significantly higher value in most parts of the United States, assuming it has been properly maintained during that time.
Were you able to hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So did you think this was it a natural voice to you? Did it feel like natural?
Yeah, pretty
Yes.
much.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, that's amazing that I can just like pick voice from like Well Said Labs sort of pro thing and totally just start using it. So I just thought it was amazing that you could do that, right? So now I can enable all of my blogs to have audio content. I can like generate a podcast by simply writing stuff instead of like having to do that, right? And this is the video, right? And again, it's this is not the person. It's a fake generated person, right? And again, uh, if you probably won't get it. And this technology is not that perfect. Like you can see that you can actually make out that this person is not real, right? You can see that the movements are not as fluid, and so. But again, trust me, within a year or so, that won't be the case, right? It'll look just like a natural person, and then you can generate. And already, like probably some competitor of Synthesia can do a very fluid video, right? So I think we're almost there to like generate audio and video without like which sound and look really really natural. Um, Hold on, we go to the next one. Um, yeah, so some of the other use cases is now, for example, I've used it for like vacation planning. For example, I'm going to Vancouver and I'm telling it, hey, I am I want to go to vacation in Vancouver. I have two kids. Their ages are this. Like I'm going with a couple of my friends, and they have kids too. What would be the nice places to visit? And it'll tell you like all this stuff. Um, and then the one thing is that with ChatGPT, you have to be remember that ChatGPT has old information. Like the model is frozen. The training data that was used was up to 2021, right? So if you ask anything about current events, it's going to miserably fail. It's either going to like say something wrong, or it's going to simply tell you that I don't know what this is, right? One of the two. So you have to ask something that's a little bit more like, you know, that existed in 2021. Um, and another thing that I used it is, you know, lot of companies have DEIB initiatives, right, which is diversity and inclusion and initiatives. And what I did is I was actually going to, one of my managers said that they're hiring like senior data scientist, and they sent me a job description. And so I gave that job description to ChatGPT and said, can you make it women friendly so that the women applicants are more likely to apply to this job, right? And it did a decent job. It like changed some wording. It added like, it changed some wording. It added like a lot of interesting stuff. It said that, we believe in diversity and inclusion. And so it did that, all of that stuff. And then we were able to use, we didn't take all of it, but we were able to actually use that to insert it. So the reason I'm saying all of these examples to you is because these are some of the real life examples that you and I encounter day to day. And what I highly encourage you to actually start using ChatGPT or other kind of generative AI for these kind of purposes. Because if you don't use it, somebody else will use it, and they will become better than you. They will produce, their output will be better than you, right? So if you don't use it, you're going to be the loser in the process, right? So let's go to the next one. Okay, so now one interesting thing is that if you are not used to using ChatGPT or technologies like that, you will probably get disappointed at first sort of output that you see. And the reason is there is a way to get what kind of output you want from ChatGPT. You have to give it enough context for it to understand why are you doing this, or why are you doing, what is the really context. Without that context, you won't be able to get it. It won't be able to help you in a much better way. So for example, if I have to give you an example of my vacation, right, I'll have to tell it a lot of stuff. Like I'll have to tell it that, okay, I have kids that are with me, I've never been to Canada, or I'm of Indian origin, or all sorts of stuff, right? So that it can understand what could be your interest, what may not be your interest. You have to also tell that I'm interested in trying Indian food in Vancouver because I've heard that Indian food is good in Vancouver. So then you have to tell all of these things to it, right? Without telling it, it would not. It's like, you have a friend that does not know you, or you have a person that does not know you. And then if that person has to help you, how much information you will need to pass from you to them for them to help you, right? So you have to give that context. Now, a lot of people on internet have come up with formula. Okay, first of all, this is a field. There's a new field that's coming up, and that field is known as prompt engineering. And the word prompt means the question that you're asking. So this new field of prompt engineering tells you, how do you ask ChatGPT or generative AI tools, or how do you ask generative AI so that generative AI can do that is usable for you. And believe me, there are literally hundreds of websites have popped up that are selling you these prompts. Okay, that are selling you this prompt because, so there's Etsy is actually a website where you sell artsy stuff, but now people are selling their prompts. Like if you want to write a book, this is how you write your prompt. If you want to write, if you want an email, this is how you write prompt. If you are writing this kind of request, this is how you write a prompt. So there's like a method to it, right? And you can buy these prompts in like $5, $4, $10, $20, depending on what you're trying to do. So you can go to any of these websites like arthub.ai, prompt flat, prompt base. I actually bought one prompt from prompt base for the sake of it, just it was like a $4.99 or something. And it's like a really long prompt. That means it's very thorough, right? For example, there are some of the thumb rules that it it is recommended that you give a role to ChatGPT. You tell him as a, who you should be. Like for example, if I'm a real estate investor and I want ChatGPT to think like a real estate investor, then I will tell in my prompt, I'll write that you are a real estate investor. You are investing in multifamily properties. So you give it a role. Now ChatGPT will start thinking like a multifamily investor, right? So it's very interesting. You have to give all sorts of helpful information. You can also define the length of the response, right? You can define format of the response. For example, once I did it, I gave one of the property management statements to it and said, uh, can you give me all the, because it's a long statement that you have to read a lot of stuff. There is everything besides rent paid, expenses. There's like much more stuff than that, right? So it takes me a while just to like get who has paid what rent, right? Just by from a statement. And it's a PDF statement. So I gave it to ChatGPT and told ChatGPT, hey, can you give me who paid how much rent this month, right? Then it found all of that stuff. But what I do every month is I actually take that information and paste it in a spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet. So what it did is it put it in a format that was not pastable, right? Easily. So then I said, hey, I want to, and it remembers the context, right? That means you don't have to start from scratch every time. You can just say, hey, can you please give me the same output, but in a format I can simply copy paste to my Google spreadsheet. Then it'll output in a different way, which is actually, so you have to keep developing your story sort of like to a point until you get the right output. Right? So you can also specify the format. So like for example, right here, some of the examples, like I did it. I was writing an email, right, about this webinar. So I said, hey, I'm going to do a webinar about generative AI revolution. I'm sending out an email to potential attendees. I need to describe what I'm going to do in a webinar in a way that the potential audience will find it interesting. I have written a paragraph. Can you please word it better? And so you do this, then it transformed the paragraph, right? It gave me all this stuff. And then my MailChimp said, well, these are really long sentences. Nobody's going to read this email, right? So then I said, well, but sentences in above response seems to be too long. I'm wondering if you can reword the response into shorter sentences. And then it gave me something like this. And there is no way I could have written this myself. Like it's beyond my capability. It's really accurate, really concise, and really amazing, right? So then I pasted this in my email. So those people who got the initial email, you probably have this. This is how I generated my email, right? And again, here, right? I wanted to post on social media one day, right, about something, and then I gave it a context, like I gave a prompt like this, and it generated me like something for social media, right, with the tags, right? So that's amazing. Now, of course, I didn't take the whole thing. Like you have to, of course, exercise your judgment, right? But that's what prompt engineering is about, right? Is to just giving the right prompt, essentially, to have your output produced. And I've done all sorts of stuff. Like I give a LADWT sort of a bill to it, and then it told me what is my electricity charges, what are my sewer charges. Like you can keep asking after that, what are my sewer charges, what are my electricity charges, and it's very accurate actually about it. So you can upload. There is an extension that comes, so you can simply Chrome extension. You can install that Chrome extension, and the Chrome extension will allow you to upload files to ChatGPT, right? And then you can do much more with ChatGPT besides just asking questions. Okay. Yeah, actually, I did the case study. Now, one thing you need to be extremely careful about is ChatGPT does lie. Okay, and there is a reason for it. There's a technical term called hallucinations for it. And by the way, Wikipedia has like a whole page of AI hallucinations, and it mainly happens because I think the code generation is the wrong thing here, but it's mainly because it's what I was trying to explain earlier, right? Which is that you're not feeding exactly the same data that you need output for, right? So it tries to guess things, right? And that guessing goes horribly wrong sometimes. So please be cautious while using these tools. Please take with a grain of salt. That's why I use it mainly for like, I don't use it as a source of knowledge, if that makes sense to you, right? Instead, I use it because in case of Google, it'll point me to the knowledge source, and then it'll tell me, then I can verify who the source is, right? And then it's much better for me to understand whether this can be accurate or not. Whereas if you just ask ChatGPT, you won't even know that it's actually lying or hallucinating, right? So you might, just because it says it convincingly and confidently, you might think that it's true, and then you will fall flat on your head. So be very careful about using these tools. They hallucinate, they give you wrong information, and they give you wrong information in a confident way. So remember, one thing you need to remember is if you produce something using ChatGPT, your name is on it, okay? And use it at your work or whatever business, whatever. Since you are the one who is posting it or submitting it, whatever, your name is on it, your reputation is on stake. So make sure you validate everything, right? So even if I use it to get the rent out of this, right, I'll still ask my um, my assistant to actually go and check whether these rents are correct or not. Now you might say that, well, what's the use of ChatGPT then if you are a human oversight on it? People tend to miss one big point here, right? Generating something from scratch takes a long time. So if I tell my assistant, read this property management segment and find out trends, then she's going to take a lot longer to actually do that. But instead of that, if I give my assistant an already generated output and I tell her, hey, is this correct or not? That is much faster. And so you ultimately do end up saving time. So keep that in mind. Okay, so even if you have to have an oversight on these things, and eventually you will start learning that, oh, it does this kind of task really well, reliably well. And in those kind of use cases, you will try to rely on ChatGPT, correct, or generative AI models. So you got to learn that yourself, essentially. So now the one interesting question is, what is the short-term implication of it, right? And the biggest implication that I see happening in short term, the long-term implications are different, in my opinion. The short-term implications is that there is going to be a huge rise in productivity, okay? Because you can do all of these things much faster, right? Developers can generate code. People who are in QA can write tests faster. So there is going to be a productivity increase, not just in technology, but in marketing or everywhere else, right? You don't have to now depend on human. These things can do what a human will take hours in like seconds, right? So you are going to see a huge productivity increase. And that is definitely going to happen in short term. I think the two of the jobs that are not necessarily gone, but are going to get impacted severely in my limited world is at least marketing and coding or engineering jobs. Because if you can generate code, then you need less number of engineers, right, to generate those codes. So the skill set then shifts to, instead of you knowing how to code, you need to have enough knowledge to prompt ChatGPT or Copilot and then verify what they have generated is accurate or not, right? So you can see how the skill sets are shifting, right? And you're able to do that much faster, right? You're able to generate 5 days worth of code in like that otherwise you would take in like few hours, you know. So you have to be absolutely clear about what requirements you are. If you are clear about those requirements, then you're going to get huge productivity boost, essentially. And marketing is because, you know, I actually paid money to voice artists to earlier record my, blog posts. I don't need to do that anymore, right? It's way cheaper and way faster for me to actually go to Well Said Labs website and just type stuff and record it, right? So those jobs are lost essentially, right? Their voice artist job will just simply be gone. Um, right. So I think so. There are a lot of implications here. There's again, if the videos become really good, then that's another implication, right? Is that those people who are acting those things won't have to do that, right? And of course, some other new frontiers of job will open, right? But um, but that's the reality, that some jobs are going to get impacted. Um, Another short-term implications is lot of well-known products that you use day to day have started to implementing some sort of generative AI in their tooling, in their tooling. So you can do like a lot more stuff now. From, for example, if you go to Jira, they'll integrate. They haven't, I think, but Opera recently launched. Opera is a browser, right? They recently launched a version of Opera where they have ChatGPT sort of integrated in it, OpenAI stuff integrated in it. So you can simply, like, you don't have to go anywhere else. Like, it just is there. Microsoft Office is integrating a lot of these tools themselves. Slack is integrating. They have a bot, Slack bot or something. Trello, Discord has something. Notion.ai is a very, it's a software where you can take notes and to do and all that stuff. They already have Notion.ai. Sorry, Notion.ai. Notion is the name of the company, but now they launched Notion.ai. And Notion.ai is it's amazing that it helps you generate stuff much faster. So now documentation becomes much easier of stuff as well. Like, I'm sure Confluence will add it, right? So now all these software that we use in day-to-day world will get impacted, and there will be some sort of help. And as a result of that, again, productivity will increase, right? In Excel, like something you have to do complicated formula, you don't have to do that now. You can simply say that, hey, calculate IRR for this, instead of like remembering formula of IRR in parentheses, what is the first argument, second argument, third. You don't have to remember all that, right? You should be able to describe what you want in a natural language, and it can simply um, do those things for you, right? So that is another short term, again, productivity boost, but in a different way, sort of short term. This bloom of sort of Bloom is actually an open source LLM too, but there's like a lot of open source LLMs. And what people will start doing is they will start hosting these LLMs, or they have already started hosting these LLMs or large language models in their own private cloud. And those will be used to sort of query your company specific things. And it'll become much more, a general purpose sort of AI will suffice a lot of use cases. But again, the issue with large language models is that they're very, very computationally expensive. So the traditional AI is not going to go away. And the reason it's not going to go away is because it's much cheaper to do, if you train a model to do one specific thing, right? It's also going to work so much faster that the cost between running an LLM versus a specific model is a lot different. So that's why, in my opinion, unless large language model become significantly cheaper computationally, which will happen in 5-10 years or whatever number of years, they will not necessarily go away. Yeah, Sid, you have a question?
Yeah, so the question is, we've been talking about this large language model. Is it just a combination of natural language processing, right? Either textual or voice, and generative AI, or is there more to it? Do you know?
No, generative AI is a kind of AI, sort of, right? It's just a kind of model, sort of. And large language model, it just means that it's a natural language processing model that of mostly in transformer nature or architecture. So transformer is an architecture. So it's a deep neural network. Okay, so it's of type deep neural network, but it just, you feed a lot of data in, essentially, in it, and then it kind of figures out what is what just by ingesting all of that data. Okay, in a traditional AI, what we do is we we feed specific examples of thing, and it only knows one thing to do. I'm only can tell you whether this is bus. Whereas here you just keep feeding the whole internet data, and it kind of starts figuring out all these concepts. Like you just keep it training it for hours and hours and hours, and it starts like understanding English language. And language is very powerful because you express all of your knowledge in language, correct? So as it starts understanding language, it also starts understanding the knowledge that's expressed in that language, right? And as a result of that, it starts like learning. Again, learning is only happening in training phase. Okay, it starts learning and then starts answering back. I don't know if I've done a good job in answering your question, but
No, I think
it's gonna.
you in fact emphasized what I was saying, which is it's a combination of natural language processing and interpretation,
Yeah,
along with contextual analysis,
yeah,
and using generative AI techniques, right? Because it
yeah.
is time
That's
machine.
correct.
Generative AI is time.
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, yeah. So I mean, if you want a list of all open source large language models, you can go in this blog post. And this blog post will give you all the list of large. There's like ton of them, literally. Yeah, Swapna.
So you just mentioned that, you could have it on, you could have a model running on your internal cloud, and you can train it on your company specific data, right? So we have been actually experimenting with some of that in our organization, because we have seen that, like, let's say you're writing a grant proposal, for example. Um, you try it writing it different ways, and then certain type of writing works better for a certain organization. This type of writing works with a army related thing, versus this type of thing works better with the IRS, for example. So we have this internal thing, but then we want to make sure that anybody who's writing the grant proposal is learning from this thing, right? Not just, okay, now it's in somebody's head. Last time I wrote it this way and it worked better. We are trying to bring all of that knowledge together so that we can use it across the board within our organization, and it becomes our own knowledge base. Also, everybody's trying to create their own. We are trying to create our own prompt scripts and things like that work, so that, or even we want to use AI to analyze some of these things. So let's say we sent out these outreach emails. It should be able to analyze, if you write your emails this way, you're getting better response versus that way. Is there any source you can recommend that we can fine tune our efforts to do that, so that we can bring our own knowledge into our workflow?
I think I would do it differently, because there's one point that I was struck me is that I don't think the intention should be to train your people. The intention should be that you just train your people enough so that the proposal is written by ChatGPT or LLMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely,
But we're
yeah.
trying to use our expertise, because if you would use general ChatGPT, it gives you a lot of fluff and very generic proposal. We are experts.
That means you haven't figured out. They have to
individual.
figure out a prompt, right prompt.
Right. So is there any book or any, like best practices to build your own organization's knowledge base or something like that? Are you aware of something?
There's a lot of prompt engineering on internet. You just Google prompt engineering and you'll get a lot of formulas about how to build prompt and all that stuff. But I don't know if there is like anything available on just how to do. Google has a product actually that in their private cloud, which is I think generally available right now. So I can say it. So what they do is it allows you to build a knowledge-based website. It is in Google Cloud, okay?
Mhm.
Knowledge-based website by submitting your data into it.
Mhm.
So then you submit your data and it runs its own model, PALM on it. And now you can search anything within that. And it is smart. It's not just search like Google search. You can ask questions and it'll answer those questions.
Do you know the name of the tool off the top of your head?
I don't know the name of the tool, but it's
I
in
believe
Google Cloud. You have to actually get Google Cloud subscription for it.
Yeah, that's
Like,
fine. We
AWS.
use everything Google. So
Yeah. So you have to literally sign up for Google Cloud. Now to be fair, it's very hard to predict long-term implications, right? But I'm going to just give it a shot at it. Just, I think in long term, there'll be like a lot of no code, low code kind of. I don't know if you've heard this term. This term is actually, it just means that you can like generate applications without having to actually code, right? Or have a minimal code sort of in place. These are all tooling, right? So they will essentially, these technologies will go to a place where people don't have to actually code, and then you can just describe some stuff and entire application gets built. It's far away. It's 10 years away. I don't know how many years away, actually. It's very hard to predict even how many years it's away. So again, at that point, then what happens is the engineer's job shifts from having to actually do coding to figure out how to use these tools, right? And then everybody becomes a product person in a way, instead of so I think I do think that in long term, engineering skill set is seriously in jeopardy. So that's why I said it will impact everyone. Like you have to be worried about it. Don't take this lightly. Like this is very serious stuff. There's actually a couple of documentaries on the internet. They're like you'll get scared if you watch them, because there's one of them is called AI Dilemma, and it's made from the makers of Social Dilemma. But I myself, I'm not scared about it. I'm enthusiastic about it. Because to me, it just gives you a new something else to learn, right? I mean, please keep in mind that these kind of technological disruptions are not new, right? Not at all new, right? When now I am old enough to some of you are probably not even old enough to understand what Lotus 123 is, but Lotus 123 is like the spreadsheet before Google, before Excel came out, right? And so when Lotus 123 came out, and later on Excel got developed into this amazing product that it is today, a lot of jobs got lost, right? I mean, people who were doing these computations by hand and making these sheets manually, they got lost. Like, but then what happened is those bookkeeper learned how to use these sheets, and they started doing different things, right? So some people there's a term that gets used, which is, it doesn't change the job, it doesn't take away the jobs, but it take away your job description. That means it changes your job description, essentially. So a lot of that will happen, is that people will have to be more product oriented. They will transform. Yeah, they'll become new stuff. So I think, but another important message that I want to give it is adapt or perish, right? That means those who did not learn these things perished, or those who did not adapt, then they lost their jobs, and they suffered a lot, right? And some of you are like even engineering leaders in your companies, right? So you have to take your organization and change it. Amol, I think I agree. It's possible that prompt engineering could become a course in universities one day. But if you don't adapt, then you're on your own. Then I don't know what will happen. And what really scares me in a way is that the pace of change is very fast in this field. Like 6 months ago, you did not know a lot of these things, and 6 months ago, you open your eyes and you didn't. Oh my God, so much stuff exists. I didn't even know that, right? And a lot of this has developed in last year or two, right? So the pace of change is like really fast, and next 1 or 2 years, it'll be even more different, newer stuff will coming. And the last thing I want to say is that it's just the beginning, right? I was in a meeting yesterday with in a CTO forum for Los Angeles area CTO. Amol knows CTO forum. I think he used to. I don't know, Amol or somebody here used to come CTO forum. But I was in a CTO forum, and I had a head of Cohere AI, right? And they Cohere AI. So they make foundational models. So what foundational models means that most of this, actually, hold on, go here for AI. Sorry, it's called go here for AI. Okay. So this is again a company like OpenAI, which is a non-profit company that generates foundational model. And foundational models are these large models that are so usually when people do AI in companies, all they're doing is they're taking these foundational models and tuning it to their use, right? So there are very few companies who actually generate foundational models. So OpenAI is one company, Cohere for AI is another company, which are actually generating those foundational models. And if you look at who we were, right? Sarah Hooker was there yesterday, and she was giving a talk, and I was there at the talk, and she was mentioning about how a lot of these technologies are nascent right now, and we have barely sort of scratched what it can do, right? And she's not even happy with how they perform right now. And we think it's so good right now, right? But it has like tremendous potential, and it's going to do like way more things in future, essentially. So it is just the beginning, right? You just need to keep your eyes open and ears open to see what it can do in future. I think that's pretty much it. Cool. Any other thoughts, questions?
No, this was very cool, Vaibhav. Thank you.
Yeah, Vaibhav,
You're
this is
welcome.
very informative. Thanks for putting this together. Are you? I know you recorded the presentation, but do you also have a slide deck? Can you share that? Just
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share that with you. Yeah.